everybody. A warm welcome to Blanka Talks episode 5, The Inclusive Teacher. I'm Anna-Karin Berg, the host of Blanka Talks, Blanka Schools, Cyber and Snitz High School's international talk show for and with teachers. Our very important contributors in this program series are Varkey Foundation and Teachers Without Borders, and of course, the most important ones, our teachers from all over the world. In this episode of Blanka Talks, which is called The Inclusive Teacher, we will chat with 3 teachers from very different backgrounds and have very different experiences, and we will listen to their thoughts on inclusion, why it's important, and what are the key ingredients to be an inclusive teacher. But before we get to meet our first guests, let's put a finger on this concept of inclusion. What does it mean to be in an inclusive learning environment? To put it simply, an inclusive classroom is a general education classroom where students with and without learning differences learn together. There are, of course, many studies and many publications on learning styles, differentiated learning, challenges of multicultural classrooms, etc., etc. But these studies are just scratching the surface and, frankly speaking, only address a very limited perspective on learners in a classroom. What we are facing today, in these tumultuous times of war, crisis, and pandemics, are meeting learners that may carry trauma, are anxious about climate crisis, cyberbullying, well, just growing pains it might be. They are troubled by so many other things in their private life or personal life that school and learning may not be a priority at all. So, how can we, in education, create a safe space for learning, create a focus for the task at hand, and empower learners to continue to strive forward, to learn and to develop? With us today, we have some very important teachers that change the lives of learners every day. We will soon be talking with Miriam Sise, a teacher and country manager of Educate Sierra Leone. We will talk with Lars Österberg, teacher at Snitz Gymnasium in Stockholm. And we will also be having an interview with Petter Eriksson, who's the co-founder of an NGO called Vale Vale Kenya. Let's introduce our first guest, Miriam Sise. She is the country manager of Educate Sierra Leone, but she started her career as a teacher in the UK. Let's begin our introduction of her with a little clip.
Educate is trying to provide education to youngsters who would otherwise not be able to access education, at least not access it meaningfully, as in getting the sort of education that will get them past grades, that will get them out of poverty. Most of our youngsters are from very poor backgrounds. Among them, we have youngsters who were gang members and living on the streets, earning their lives with all sorts of thuggery and violence. All sorts of youngsters with very difficult backgrounds. We've got children whose parents are in prison. We've got children whose parents have been mixed up in all sorts of criminal activities. When they get to us, that's where they can put that behind them and move forwards.
We have vision for our kids, really. We have great vision for them. That is why, in the first place, when we are training them to be perfect Sierra Leoneans. We have educated Sierra Leoneans, doctors, professors, they are stakeholders, they are politicians, etc., etc. But if you look to what they are doing, it's contrary to their titles, to their education. So sometimes we do doubt, what type of education is that? So education is real. So we are thinking about real education. Education that can inject the concept of citizenship in you, that can make you be a patriot, that can give you a good heart. That can transform you completely. So you always be thinking about a good Sierra Leone, a better Sierra Leone, not just me, but us.
It was one of the straws that broke the camel's back for the war to start. was he told everybody that education was a privilege, not a right. It is clearly still that in the elite's mind here. In a context where we are nearly the only, if not the only, free secondary schools in the country, and yet with the most vulnerable children, with the children with the most disrupted education to date, before they get to Educate, we are getting the highest results. So in a country where at primary level, it's in the sort of 50-60% pass rate. At junior secondary level, around 40% pass rate each year. At senior secondary, it's at 10, 12, 14% each year pass rate. And Educate, it's 95 to 100% consistently every year, because we prepare our teachers properly, because our teachers work with a real commitment and a difference in attitude. They love the children they're working with, they love the work that they're doing, they are conscious that they were there yesterday.
Thank you so much, Miriam, and your staff and colleagues at Educate for sharing this video with us. It gives a good perspective of how you work with the learners and what type of situations you're in and what's important for your organization. So welcome, Miriam.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. I know you have a very busy and hectic schedule right now. You're not in Sierra Leone right now. Where are you?
I'm in the north of England. I'm just whizzing around, meeting our partners and donors and supporters, reminding everybody that we're still here. And I work in collaboration with a good number of churches and schools and some companies. So just getting the links back going really after COVID, because those partnerships, people were out of work, schools weren't operating, churches weren't functioning. So, and the events that people had set up couldn't take place. So it's just getting things back on track again, so that those collaborations and partnerships can move forwards.
Wonderful. So I understand, really important that you are where you are right now, of course. When will you be going back to Sierra Leone and to Educate?
A couple of weeks. I come over for 3 or 4 weeks a couple of times a year.
Yes.
But most of the time I'm in Sierra Leone.
Okay, fantastic. Wonderful.
It's too cold to be here much longer.
I know, it's horrible, isn't it? But you started as a teacher in the UK, and then what happened? What is your journey? What is your story, and how did you start working with Educate?
So my brother and his friends went to visit Sierra Leone in 1993 as part of a student exchange program, and they started sending small amounts of money to pay for kids that they had met who were out of school, so to pay their school fees. I was just fundraising in whatever school I was teaching in at the time, and then in 97 I visited, and it was clear that we were sort of wasting our time, that the quality of what was there to be paid for wasn't really going to change children's lives. It was bums on seats, keep them out of trouble for a little while, but it wasn't going to actually give them the sort of education that would take them out of poverty. So it was either stop or do something a bit more considered. So I moved out in 2000 to Sierra Leone to start our first school where we would be able to control the quality. And of course, that was coming towards the end of the war. So loads of kids were out of school, either because their school had been burnt down by the rebels, or because the person who'd been paying for them had died, or because they were looking after their siblings, or because they were fighting a war. You know, there were all sorts of reasons why kids were not in school. So we started with we tried to find a new way of working with our youngsters that would enable this sort of real range of needs and experience and ability to actually all move forwards together.
Oh, that's I would love to visit you one day and just like.
Please do.
Yes, absolutely, and see how we can contribute as well, because I know that you carry with you amazing results with the work that you've done for the students and for the children and their learning.
We're very excited about some of what our youngsters are up to and the alumni. I was receiving WhatsApp messages on Saturday from a young woman who was being awarded for being one of the top 50 most influential women in the district. Well, I remember going off into the night to rescue her. Literally, I got a call, Miriam, come and pick me up. I've run away, because she'd been put under, starved for 3 days because she was refusing to get married to a 57-year-old. She was 16 and, she wanted to get an education. Well, she came to us, she finished her education, her school education, went to university, and now she's running a foundation for girls' empowerment. That's the possibility when you become part of a family. You get a future because you're getting an education. Also, so many exciting stories, and I'm extremely proud of the youngsters and their resilience and commitment to their own education, but also to coming and putting it back. Like all of our schools are now run by Educadians. So that feels very exciting. Our outreach programs are all run by Educadians.
Yeah.
So they learn, but then they're learning to give back and be part of not just getting good grades, but being part of building the country.
Right. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much. We will talk absolutely more about this, of course, a little bit later. But let's meet our second guest, Lasse. He's a teacher at Snitts Gymnasium in Stockholm. So Lasse, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm great. I'm recovering from Corona I had last week. So I still have a cough. I have asthma, so I'm coughing.
Oh, okay. So
but now I'm quite good. I'm working again. So.
Fantastic. I know you're needed, and we're so happy to have you with us, and that you take the time and energy to be with us. So could you tell us a little bit more about what made you decide to become a teacher in the beginning? That's not your original career, is it?
No, it was actually I was becoming a priest. So I was studying theology for a long time, but at the school where I studied theology, you could also study to become a teacher, and I studied both. So both this Greek and religion, history, religion, and also all kinds of religions, actually. And I found it quite early. I found it was more interesting to stand in front of a group of people and having several thoughts at the same time. This is the way the Christian thinks, and this is the way Buddhist thinks, and so on. So I and after my theology studies, I read history to become a history teacher, and then the pedagogics part. But I've been working as a teacher now for 20 plus years. So.
Wonderful. But could you tell us also a little bit more about the school where you work, Snitts?
Yes, that's a small school in Stockholm, Sweden, with only like 200 students. And all the students at my school, they have diagnostics of some kind of function variations within the autism spectrum syndrome. It could be ADD or ADHD or dyslexic or social, things they can't function well in a normal class. But we're not a special school. I don't know the English word, särskola. It's normal upper secondary school with a normal, what you say, curriculum. Curriculum, yes. So, all classes are small. In first year, we take in 15 students, But as I have religion and history, I meet the second or third year students, and then there are only like 10 students per class.
Yeah.
So we have lots of time and to help them, their different needs, and do all this, things that we need to do to make them comfortable so they could function. So, and we succeed quite well as long as they are here. So.
Yes. That's of course one of the parts you as a teacher, I think, independent sometimes of where you are in the world, you struggle with. That it's hard for learners to come to school, to be there.
Yes, and as you said in the beginning, we live in uncertainty times in the world. Many are anxious and worried about lots of things.
Yes.
And especially the students we meet are even more anxious and even more worried and even more their problems are felt even bigger.
Yeah. Of course.
But we're struggling, but still we are succeeding quite well. Anyway.
Yeah, it is very important where you have this. I mean, you follow the curriculum, the syllabus, and so on, but you adapt. The structure of teaching and of learning this curriculum. So yes, that's very important. So, but actually, Lasse and Miriam, this is the first time that you meet as well. So I'm gonna open up with a question that you both answer, and that is, do you have a teacher that had an impact on you when you grew up or something that made you feel accepted and included? And who was that in that case, if you can remember? Or if you have any, or it could be another person. I don't know, but if it's a teacher, what would you say, Lasse? Do you remember anyone who had that impact on you?
Yes, indeed. I had a history teacher who was very, what to say? I mean, not the strict kind that have the lectures, but more the funny type, or the type that made you feel comfortable and relaxed and always very glad, very enthusiastic, and made us be interested in the subject, and was very funny. So yeah, I have a teacher that I remember.
Thank you. And what about you, Miriam? Do you have anyone that had that impact on you, or someone?
I would almost say not really until I got to university.
Okay.
I swore I wouldn't teach. It just didn't work because I didn't like school. But when I got to university, there was one particular woman who was super inspiring. You know, we always said, you know, she was just like a walking brain the size of a planet, and but she enthused us all about the subject, which was a bit of obscure 17th century French literature. She also taught us French language, and you know, she was Scottish, and she had pushed herself and to really be accurate in her language use, and she was inspiring. But I don't think I did much at school, if I'm honest.
Well, you don't have to. You don't actually have to do much to feel involved or included, anyways. I mean, you can just be there. For some people, it's just not about the learning, perhaps itself, but more about the socializing. Perhaps
it's definitely formed my thinking that I didn't particularly feel that at school, and so in running our schools, you know, to think about how to not replicate what went on there in a way.
Absolutely. I totally understand that one. One of the reasons I became a teacher to begin with. So in that case, Miriam, what would you say? I mean, you work with the children with different experiences that some of them carry trauma and so on. But what do you say are the key ingredients to empower these children and youngsters to feel included and to feel that we are a community, we can move forward and strive from that.
I think there are two words I'd like to sort of focus on. One is respect, and the other is the Southern African term Ubuntu. So respect, you know, if I respect each individual in my class, then I see them and their needs and have to find ways of supporting their learning in whatever way that needs to be. So if it's to pair you two up, if it's to move you over there nearer the window, if it's to, you know, we're in quite a resource constrained context. So, you know, in the UK, I might be talking about, okay, you get a computer or you have this access to that app or this program, whatever. We're not really talking about that. We're talking about using much more limited range of resources, but respectfully. So thinking about the individual in front of me and seeing them as individuals and knowing them, knowing each child, knowing them, not just their name, but their issues, their ways of learning, what's kicking off at home, what they might be bringing with them, making sure that they feel safe in the school. So each of our schools is divided into tutor groups, and each tutor group is divided into families, and they're vertical families. So they have older and younger students all mixed in, and then family leaders, and that's where they look after each other. So it's not that the teachers don't, but that they learn to have that safe space and to look after each other in that space. And so they will also look after each other in the class and look after each other in you know, the study hall. They eat together, they do their laundry together, all of those things, but they also look after each other's studies. And then it's very related is this idea of Ubuntu. I don't know if you've come across it. I am, because we are. Yes? Fantastic. Well, so Ubuntu education to me is like, if that piece is missing, your maths and your science and everything else doesn't really matter. So it's that my humanity is less if I am indifferent to yours. Mm-hmm. I'm not my best Miriam if I don't care about Anna Karin's issues, and that we therefore support each other, and that sense of belonging is crucial, and community and brotherhood, sisterhood, you know, caring, sharing, kindness. And, you know, I say to my youngsters, frankly, I'd rather not have helped you improve your qualifications and skills if your heart's not in the right place, because you're only going to use those improvements to further screw the country. So you stay down at the bottom of the pile, and we'll help somebody that has their heart in the right place. And that sounds a little bit harsh, but I want them to get it, that's why we do our subjects. It's not to do the subjects, it's so that we can actually learn, you know, gain the skills to build our community, to build our country. And so all of that works together to actually, you know, push us to be more creative in the opportunities that we open up to the students, to show what they've learned, to help each other learn, to support each other's learning, to explain that to the younger ones, and that sort of thing, so that it works as a community. So if you go into an educated classroom, you won't see the teacher up at the front and then everybody, you know, sort of sitting there listening and taking notes or whatever. It'll be on tables. Those guys are working on Unit 8. Those are working on Unit 2. We're all on the class. We're working on agricultural science. But, you know, if I get stuck on my table, then I ask a colleague. If I get really stuck, I call a teacher. But the first point of call is to actually ask one of the others. And so they are all used to explaining things to each other and helping each other, and it makes for a very different sort of environment. The collaboration rather than just competition.
Right, marvelous. Lasse, what would you say? Do you have the same kind of thoughts on?
Yeah, it sounds familiar. Everything you said, how important it is to get to know know each other and build relationships and help each other out, and not, as I said, have this one have a lecture and always taking notes and working together, of course. Yeah, we do the same. Maybe it's how you view, also how pedagogics, how you view as how people learn or not. That varies, of course. If you have the more, Vygotsky's view that there's a teacher is like a gardener who should fertilize and water and put sunlight and make the plant to grow, or how do you see learning? And I am more that type that everyone has to learn by itself, but as a teacher my task is to help everyone grow as much as possible. So and in our school with all this we have all these different kind of solutions that one student doesn't talk, only writes. One has to sit behind the screen all the time, can't interact with others, and others are the opposite. They want to interact all the time, too much. So they say, okay, now you have to go out and run for a bit and then come back and work. So we have all kinds of needs that we have to make special solutions to. But otherwise, I feel it's just the importance to build relationships so they feel comfortable and safe, and despite their variations they have. Yeah. But we all have variations. So.
Yeah, absolutely. To receive that kind of acceptance, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, yes, you are who you are, but we're in this together.
Yeah.
So, but what do you think is needed from teachers, and society to make sure that you can do the work that you do to promote inclusive teaching and to make students feel or learners more included in the classroom? Do you think there are any obstacles, and what could we do to kind of what must we do to get rid of these obstacles, perhaps? What about you, Miriam? What would you say? Do you understand my question? Sorry, I think I was a little bit blurry, maybe.
Let me try, and you can tell me if I've missed the point.
Okay. I bet you won't, but...
So increasingly, what we are trying to do is engage the student's voice, so to really create opportunities to make sure that they are controlling the agenda on how the school is run. We discuss, we have student discussion on how the budget is used, how we spent the money last month. Do we want to spend it the same way this month? How we're planning an upcoming event, how we're going to avoid what happened yesterday ever happening again, how we're going to make sure that what happens that was so fantastic yesterday is how we, that we continue with that. So we're trying to really, so in those family groups, we do a lot of listening to the students, and they discuss policy. They have an input on policy, and they sort of, so that they understand that they have not only the right, but the responsibility to use their voice to make the world a better place, but also to make the learning better and more effective, so that they are engaged in deciding how they're going to fix things, how they're going to help sort this one's behavior issues out, how are they going to support that other one in, sort of talking to their parents about taking them out of school or whatever, so that they are really engaged in all of the day-to-day processes of how the school runs. That's not common where we are, but we're finding it really crucial for both staff and students to really increase their ability to deliver an education that is individualized and therefore inclusive, because it's designed for each person.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you. And you did understand my question. Yes. Thank you. What about you, Lasse? What's your take on it?
I think of the importance to find the interests of the students. If I talk about history or religion, and they can maybe they have the opportunity to make a essay about something they themselves are very interested about. So if you make the connection about their interests, then it makes everything easier. Sometimes we have lots of students, and we all have maybe that are not so interested in going into school whatsoever, and that could be hard to get them to understand that they are learning for their sake and for the society's sake, and I mean not for my sake or their mother's sake. And I sometimes can be harsh and say I can give you an F and what you say and not okay, great.
It will fail.
Yeah, I can give you all a fail. I get my salary every month anyway. You're not doing this for my sake, because sometimes I get the students who, they're writing to me, Lasse, I'm writing this 3 a.m. and here's my essay, and I hope you're happy now. So no, I'm not happy. I get my salary anyway. You are happy because you have made a good work and you have a high grade, but you're studying for your sake and the society's sake. So that's what we're talking about a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I was thinking now, I mean, since you do have students that may not have that support from the home, from parents, they may not have parents or relatives that support schooling at all. And I think we can also see this in Sweden, Miriam, where school is not important. You know, it's not, unfortunately, for many different reasons. Who are we to like judge anyone, really? But to really have that support and be able to create this kind of, yes, education is important because it will take you somewhere and you will be part of something greater. And I think, as you both talked about, that this is also what we have to teach, I guess. As you said before, Miriam, it's not about the subjects perhaps per se, like mathematics and how you succeed in those subjects, but it's about the more holistic approach.
It's about why you would even want to be excellent at maths or whatever. Exactly. It's because what will that achieve? Yeah. Not just being able to sit an exam, but have the skills that enable you to then, take up a particular role or think in a particular way, bring that to bear on what's happening in a particular project, there may be in school, but also on and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Miriam and Lars, for your thoughts. We have one more question that we will talk a little bit more about a little bit later. Won't take too long because, again, I know you have very hectic schedules. But we actually have a third guest, not with us, but we have created an interview or made an interview with him, and it's Petter Eriksson. He's a social sciences teacher here in Sweden, but he's also the co-founder of an organization in Kenya and also here in Sweden called Vale Vale. So Vale Vale Kenya is an NGO who runs a youth center in Africa's largest townships, Kibera, Nairobi. And I represent Drottning Blanka high schools, as I said at the beginning. We have just started a collaboration with Vale Vale through a photo exhibition called Who Am I? And this project is intended to get our students connected here in Sweden with youngsters in Kenya, in Kibera, through that youth center. So we're going to have workshops that will take place in some of our schools in order to see that there aren't perhaps that many differences between us. We are struggling with the same issues and thoughts and feelings independent of where you are in the world. So let's look at that interview with Petter Eriksson. What's your relationship with Kenya? How did it all begin with this organization, Vale Vale, and how did it all start?
I've been asking myself that too. It's actually quite interesting because I started off, for me, this Kenyan journey started off with when I was in high school, and I had the chance to travel down with a group to Kenya when I was 19. And when I sat on the plane back home, I just knew one thing is that I'm going to come back one day. So then a year after my high school graduation, I went down as a volunteer, and then that has sort of led me on, because then I became involved in an organization, and then I realized it's possible to study these things on university. So I've got a master's degree in development studies, as it's called, development work. And then I moved down to Kenya because by that time I was already involved in an organization. And I had also during that time met my wife, who is still my wife, and we were colleagues. But we saw at the organization where we saw that things are not running the way we like it. So that's how we ended up starting our own organization, which was Vale Vale.
What does your organization do in Kenya, and what do you do in Sweden as well? I mean, because they're two different operations, I assume. So let's start with the one in Kenya, please.
So the Kenyan organization, which is the heart of the whole organization, is basically a youth center located in Kibera, which is considered one of the largest slum areas in Africa, with about between 1 to 2 million people living there. The numbers fluctuate a lot, but so we run a youth center where young people in the ages from 8, 10 there up to 18, 19, sometimes even higher, but around there. And the purpose of the youth center is, number one, to have a place to go, because beside poverty and other sort of easy imaginable problems that youth in Kibera face, one of the greatest dangers, as we know it, is the lack of having something to do. In combination with the very high rates of crime and very high rates of like easy access to drugs and those things, it becomes very, very difficult for a young person to always keep on the right track. But what we figured out is that if a young person can go straight from school to come to us and do something fun, then that's a very important factor in that person's ability to build a life in the future. So Vale Vale Sweden is a Swedish non-governmental organization, non-profit organization, working. At the moment, our function is that we collect money and send down to Kenya, and we also have a sort of an advisory role, like we can assist at some parts in the management and so on in Kenya. But Vale Vale Sweden, we have our own sort of core purposes, which is 3. The first one is that we want to support and sponsor any organization that sort of shares our values and our goal, which right now is Vale Kenya, of course. But then apart from that, we also want to create or make how do you say, like, we want to build bridges between Kenya and Sweden. Basically, we want to create opportunities for exchange, particularly among youth. In Vale Vale Kenya and Vale Vale Sweden, we are very, very keen on never ever portraying our young target groups in Kenya as victims, for instance. So you will never see on our website portraying pictures of poor, sad kids, for instance. We don't want to portray our target groups as victims, because they're not. They are the very opposite of victims. They are very highly capable, striving young people who lack opportunities only. The opportunities is what they lack. That's what we try to provide. But so our third and last goal as an organization in Walla Sweden is to bring about that discussion. How do Western development organizations, how do we work with those images and stereotypes, and how can we sort of create a new form of development cooperation that avoids these things? Because we think that it's definitely possible.
What is the impact that you've seen so far with your organization and with the youngsters? So basically the money that you raise here in Sweden and the collaborations, how does it benefit the youngsters in your youth center?
Yeah, so there are different, we can differ between some hard facts. And those are mostly related to education. While Sweden, we help to fund high school fees. In Kenya or in Kibera, almost everyone comes through primary school, 8 years primary school. But then after that, it becomes very, very expensive. So it's 80% of the young people in Kibera do not finish high school as a gymnasium. And that's 4 years of high school. So it's a very, very big difference between finishing primary school and finishing high school. Finishing primary school means that, yes, you can read and write, but you can't do that much more. So you will never find jobs that are other than sort of cleaning, digging, carrying things, those manual labor jobs. But having a high school degree is the road to the future. But then we also have the softer values, the softer sort of facts that we do think are almost as important. Just the fact that throughout your childhood or throughout your teenage years, you have a place to be where you have grown-ups that you can trust and relate to and talk to. You have friends that share the same sort of background. They have similar stories from home, horrible stories about poverty and abuse and those things. But to be in a safe space where it's allowed to talk about them, where it's allowed to be yourself, and having someone to sort of help you map out a road to a future, because a lot of the kids in Kibera, they think today and maybe tomorrow, but it's very hard to have a long time perspective when you're trying to survive.
So how can we, as an organization, as schools, how can we be involved and how can we support you in your work besides the collaboration we have now with Who Am I, but other ways that we may be able to help?
So first of all, I'd say that just by joining us in this collaboration is a very, very important start. For us, that is fulfilling one of our goals, which is to create this exchange between Sweden and Kenya, especially among young people. So it's a very good first step that I'd say almost is enough. But of course, if we look a little bit more long term, of course, there are numbers of opportunities with getting involved. And for us in Walla Sweden, we usually encourage, we've been having a lot of student groups over the years doing different things, everything from small fundraisers to small exchange programs with different things. We have had youth who start some small projects just to inform about something. There are numbers of opportunities, and we at the moment we can say that we are not really having established partnerships with Swedish youth in some way. So that's something that we've been aiming to build up again, that we used to have a couple of years back, and then now we need to get that back on again. So there are numbers of possibilities when it comes to collaborating with us, and we are thankful for everyone who wants to take part in our work.
Well, I'd say, as you said, this is just the beginning. So we hope that we will be able to collaborate even more, and for a long term, of course. Okay, so thank you so much, Petter.
Thanks.
So I think what Petter says in this interview is similar to what you, Miriam, and Lasse have talked about creating this community and making you feel part of a whole. It's not just you in the world, but you are part of a group and you can do something. But I would like to hear a little bit more about, so what do you do at your school for the students to feel included? Miriam, you already talked about how they are involved in how the school is run a little bit, this kind of student democracy, you might say. But are there any other activities that you have with the students to make them feel included and create this kind of community?
Well, so for example, at the end of the day, when they sit in their families, one of the activities will be to nominate their colleagues for Ubuntu stars. So that's to recognize kindnesses and generosities that have happened through the day. So I can't nominate myself, but I might nominate Lasse and say, you know, I'd like to nominate Lasse because when I was hungry today, he shared his rice with me. Or I'd like to nominate Anna Karin for looking after me when I fell over and I was sad. You know, so they are nominating each other, and that's all about celebrating the kindnesses and recognizing that although nobody wants to be labeled as selfish, we often are. And so we need to be sort of deliberately looking for opportunities to encourage the kindness and zero tolerance to anything else. I'm just trying to think, there are so many things. The fact that all of our schools are run by past pupils and all of the teachers, like 90% of our teachers are past pupils. So there is very much this idea of family, of, you know, I was there yesterday, I understand it, I get the sort of struggles. There's things like the peer mentoring. So if you are in trouble one way or another, you are likely to be linked up with a peer mediator. If you have an academic issue, you'll be linked up with a peer mentor for that subject. There is, let me think, Miriam, come on. Things like the behavior management policy went to all of the children. They sat down and they took it apart, and the foundation is, we believe that children are good. And that's the philosophy underlying everything. And so when they actually did the sort of training on the policy, once they'd revised it and given their input and we'd sort of reformulated it and all the rest of it, we did a training, and they had to look at themselves in the mirror and say, what do I see? I see a good kid who sometimes gets it wrong and sometimes makes mistakes and sometimes does bad things, but I can put it right. And that's not who I am. And, you know, really trying to get them to move on from, some of them have got some pretty tough histories, and to not, you know, to turn the page and see a new them. And I think all of that we do quite a lot on growth mindset as well. The Carol Dweck stuff about, you know, the power of yet. So I can't do that yet. But right. You know what? I learned to overcome a problem over there. I'm going to bring that experience into this one and see whether I can't actually push myself and sort of conquer this one as well. Right. All sorts of and celebrating each other. So although, you know, we don't have like a great diversity from across the world in our schools, we have a number of different tribal groups represented. Right. So there are 17 different languages in Sierra Leone. Now, most of our schools would actually be dominated by a couple of languages, but we do make a point of actually learning some of each other's languages, and so that we enjoy rather than other, you know, differences.
Yes.
Those are the things that are coming to mind at the moment.
Thank you. What about you, Lasse? What kind of activities do you have, or kind of approaches, you might say, do you have with the students to make them feel included, besides, I mean, what you do in the classroom?
Yeah, we have to, as a teacher, you have to be very open-minded to various kinds of ways to conduct teaching, or you can't maybe do traditional things because some students are but not behaving as you're expected. It could be, I had a student that he had his ear covered with some to block out sound, and he was always sleepy, so he was sleeping on the couch, and even when I was about to have a lecture or something, I tried to wake him up. We can call him Oscar, it doesn't matter. So you have to wake up now and listen to me, for 10 minutes because I have a lecture here. And he didn't. He was just muttering, I could not make him wake up. It was literally snoring often. He was lying on the floor under the bench. It was like, and I was just, what can I do with this guy? and the weeks went past and some months passed, and still he was still always sleeping. And I was getting more and more frustrated. So what can I do? And then one day I decided to take this student alone. Say that today we're going to have an oral exam, you and me. Come on. And I was trying to get him and listen. So did he get something of what had happened the past months or not? And he just knew everything. He had snapped every lecture and everything that was said. He just answered everything. He just could relate different perspectives and discuss on the highest level everything. But normally you just say, what is this guy? He's just sleeping. But he didn't. He was listening, but he was still snoring. Well, very strange.
Yeah, but it also makes you understand, or I mean, I would at least to understand that, okay, you have to be open, as you said, to open-minded to all kinds of things and all kinds of challenges, and be accepting of those as well.
Yeah, and let him be under the bench. It was okay. He still learned a lot.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And but we, as all our students in our school are quite in the same situation, so we have all these variations. So everybody is very tolerant and very open and very okay with different kinds of needs that
yes, of course. Sorry, Miriam, it looked like you were about to say something.
I was just wondering if either of you use universal design for learning in your schools or classrooms.
No.
I've been listening a lot to podcasts and trying to find out more about it. But I feel like there are some principles that I'm coming to understand that definitely align with things that we're already doing. But I feel like I've got more to learn, and it will be where we go next. But very much about giving students choice in how they access learning and knowledge, and in how they then demonstrate their knowledge. So, for example, if Lasse had insisted on Oscar writing it up, he would have waited forever and assumed he'd got nothing, because he was open to actually saying, okay, well, tell me about it then. Actually, then he was able to do it in a different way. And so it's designing things from that perspective, right from the word go. And I think it has a lot to teach.
Absolutely. It sounds very interesting.
Classrooms more inclusive.
Yeah.
I hope there will be opportunities to talk again when we have explored that more. And I feel like I'm like, how did I not know about this before? But and it's really codifying some things that make total sense, but because it's codified, it is actually really very useful sort of structure to make every classroom more inclusive and and more engaging.
Yeah.
As a result. And not assuming that you only need to make those accommodations for the sort of top and bottom end of the class, but that everybody actually values having some choice. Everybody values being given opportunities to say, well, shall I do, a picture with labels, or do I have to do what about a poem this time? Or
try different things as well to reach everybody.
And just make those things. Anyway, UDL. That's my new excitement.
UDL. That's sure going to remember that. Absolutely. We'll make sure that we read about it, because it does sound very similar, very familiar. Not similar, but familiar. We'll totally talk about that one again, I hope. But for now, I want to thank you so much for being a part of this talk today. For me, personally, it's been very fantastic and interesting to listen to your different perspectives on inclusive teaching and what is needed to help young children, youngsters learn and to succeed in all different kind of aspects of life. So thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to say goodbye to you, and good luck, Miriam, with your tour in the UK as well. We'll be in touch. Absolutely, Miriam and Lasse. We will talk more later. So thank you
so much for the opportunity, Anna-Karin.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye. All the best.
So thank you, everybody, for watching Blanka Talks episode 5, The Inclusive Teacher. I hope you found it very meaningful and valuable to listen in on this episode. To find out how different teachers work in the world in order to make sure that students feel included and to create this kind of sense of community among learners and colleagues and everyone. So thank you so much for being here. And the next episode is the Spanish edition, which will be aired in April. So we're gonna actually be speaking Spanish and talk about what it's about being teachers in Latin America and in Spain. So thank you.